Hi everyone, today's quick tip video is just a clean recording without all the chat of my recent YouTube live where I showed you how you can make matting layers for your stamped or printed images directly on your ScanNCut machine. Okay, so you can see here a couple of stamped greeting. These are hand stamped greeting. These are made using Stampin' Up stamps, but you could use any stamp. You could even use your own handwriting. If you've got nice handwriting, you could print something off on your computer. And this matting layer was added around these stamped images directly on the machine. From here, I also showed how you can then go on to add additional matting layers to create further offset borders, and you could then use different colours of cardstock. Now, one thing I want to explain, because I think this seems to be the bit that was a little bit confusing. Part of the process is that sometimes you need to weld, but sometimes you don't. Now, the way to explain this is, this word happy here is a hand stamped image, and all these letters making up this word are all joined together. So when I scan this, the machine is more likely to pick up the outline around the whole of the outside edge of this word, because technically there are no gaps, it's all one. There's a tiny little gap on the P there. It may or may not affect the scan, but in the most part I've found that this word, done using the technique that I'm going to show you, creates an outline around the outside edge, and in that case you don't need to use the weld facility. But in something like this, where all the letters are completely individual, these are tiny. I'll show you on a bigger. So on this one here, you can see the thanks and the so grateful are all individual letters. None of them join. The R and the A slightly touch there, but that's probably more because I just re-inked my ink pad, and this particular greeting is not normally this thick. I think that's just because it was a brand new wet juicy ink pad. But like you can see here, all the letters are individual. Now when this scans, this is more likely to pick up as individual letters, and when that happens then you use the weld facility. But I think it would probably be better if I just try and show you. The other thing I'd like to say is, obviously I use a ScanNCut SDX 2200 Disney machine, but if you've got the offset feature in your ScanNCut, irrespective of model, you should be able to follow this process. So if you've got a 600, a CM600 or a CM900, you should be able to follow it if your machine is updated with the offset feature, which Brother gave us quite some time ago. So if you've not got the latest update for your model machine, I suggest you go and get it from the Brother Solutions website and see if the offset feature comes in, and then you should be able to follow this along. Now again, depending on what model machine you have, whether it's a CM model or a DX or SDX model, the offset icon may be on a slightly different screen, but I'll point the offset icon out to you. As far as I'm aware and can remember, it looks the same on all models. You just may find it in a slightly different place on your machine. The first thing I'm going to do is start off by trying to put an outline around this word happy. So I'm just going to put it onto this mat. I'm going to load the mat into the ScanNCut machine and then show you how to proceed. Okay, so I'm going to come to scan. Now, normally when we do hand stamped images, we do direct cut. In other words, we stamp something on a piece of card and we just instantly want it cut out. This time we're going to use ScanNCut data, and I'm going to say start and send this mat with this piece of card on through the machine. Okay, so that's now recognised. So I'm going to choose the first icon, which is the outline icon. I'm just going to drag in the handles just to isolate that word happy, because I don't want the machine picking up all the other bits at this moment that are on my mat, because I'm just using a regular cutting mat here to scan on, so it'll pick up all the cut lines. I'm going to say preview. And I'm going to say OK. And I'm going to save it into the machine for now. And it's saved it, so I'm going to say OK. So I can now hit the home button and say yes, it's OK to delete all the patterns. I've not unloaded the mat from the machine. I've still got this stamped image on the piece of card on this mat. So now I'm going to go to retrieve data. I'm going to go into the machine and find the file and see what we've got. I'm just going to jump to the last page because I know that it's the last thing I've just saved. And now I'm going to zoom in and scroll down and see what I've got. I'm going to zoom in to 400% in the hope that you're going to be able to see this. Okay, so this is what we've got. Now it looks to me as though it's picked up the whole outline of the word, and that is what I want. And as I said, this is because this word happy is already all joined together. So I'm going to say OK, and I'm going to say OK again, and I'm going to come into edit. And the grey boxes are greyed out, which instantly tells me that there is only one item on this mat. Now, if for any reason it had picked up, individual letters, there would be more red boxes and these arrows would be highlighted, which means you've got more than one item on your mat. So that's a good way to also tell what you want. So I can see one red box around my word. These arrows are not lit up, so I know this is just completely one word, and that would be what I would expect from this stamped image because it's all joined up. I'm going to go to Object Edit. Now this icon here with the circles and the arrows is the offset icon. This icon, or something that looks very, very similar to it, should be available on your CM model machines if you've got your updates done on your machine. So I'm going to come to the offset icon. By default, the offset for ScanNCut data is 0.06. From memory, the offset on direct cut is 0.04. You can take this down if you want. I'm going to leave it as the default 0.06, and I'm going to say OK. But before I do, I'm not sure how well you'll see this. I'm trying to zoom in as much as I can. But in the DX models, when you apply an offset, it keeps the original offset that you made, in this case of the stamped image, and it applies an offset to it like it does in Canvas Workspace. On the CM models from memory, it will apply the offset to the original image that was there, so you'll only have one image, but in the DX models you'll have two, and hopefully that will become more clear in a minute. I'm going to say OK. So now I should be able to drag one of these away, but obviously I've got the wrong one. The one I want to keep is the offset, not the original. So I'm going to say OK and undo. And then what I'm going to do, using these arrows, which are now highlighted because there's more than one object on my mat, I'm going to toggle to get the inner one, the original scanned outline, because that's the one I want to get rid of. Because if I leave both these items in place, the blade will go around the outside of the original scanned item, then it will go around the outline of the other, and I'll be left with a skinny frame, and that's not what I want. I actually want a matting layer. So I'm going to, instead of fiddling about trying to get hold of it, I'm going to use the directional arrows. Hopefully I've got the smaller one selected, and I'm just going to move it out of the way, and I have, and there's the bigger offset now, which hopefully you should be able to see. So this original scan that I did from the stamped image, I want to get rid of. It's of no use to me. So I'm going to say OK and send it to the bin and say OK. So now I've still got the mat loaded. I've not removed the mat at all from the machine. The card is still on it with the stamped image, and I've now got the offset of the scanned outline. I'm going to say OK, OK, select and cut. Now obviously I'm only doing this with one stamped image. You could stamp this as many times as you want on your mat and apply this same principle. You could do it with a printed greeting. You could print some greeting using the fonts on your machine onto some, nice card, whatever card you can get through your machine, and scan them in and do this same process. So I'm going to say start. So I'm just going to flip you back to the other camera. I'm now going to unload the mat, and I'm going to just put a piece of card just here to one side for a minute, because I want to kind of know roughly where this was on my mat. So I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to pick up my hand stamp greeting that has now got an offset layer border all around it. So I'm just going to put that on one side. Now the word was about here, so I'm just going to bring this yellow piece of card in and just put this on my mat. And I'm going to load this back into the machine. So it says finish cutting. I'm going to say OK. The design is still there on the screen. I'm going to put this mat back in. I'm going to hit the back button, and then I'm going to come to edit, object edit, and it's selected the item that's already on the mat, and I'm going to apply another offset to this offset. So again, I'm going to choose the offset. I'll say 0.06. Remember, it makes an additional offset. It doesn't make the original one bigger. I'm going to say OK. I'm going to say OK again, and hopefully choose the smaller original white offset. I'm going to use the directional arrows to just drag it out of the way. Say OK, send it to the bin and say OK. And now I've got an offset of my offset. So I'm going to say OK, OK, select and cut and start. Okay, so I'm going to unload the mat, just put that out of the way for a minute, and here now is my offset layer of my offset. Now I'm going to show you how to do it when the words are separated or when the letters are individual. So I'm going to put this onto this mat. Flip you back to the screen. I'm going to say yes, okay, I've finished, and hit the home button, and I've done with that one. So now I'm going to load in the mat. I'm going to do scan to cut data, and start. Again, now I can see the greetings on the screen. I'm just going to choose outline. I'm going to drag in the handles to isolate my words, and I'm going to try and go for the so grateful, because as well as being individual letters, it's two separate words. And I'm going to say preview. And I'm going to say OK. And I'm going to save it into the machine. And I'm going to say OK. So now I can hit the home button and say OK. I'm leaving the mat where it is with the stamped images on it. I'm not unloading it. I'm going to go to retrieve data from the machine and jump to the last screen and find my word. Now I can see by looking at it, it's also picked up some of the little marks above it, which I think was where I'd cut one out originally, but that's fine for now. I'm just going to say OK and get it onto my mat for now. I'm going to go to edit, and I'm going to, you can see now that the blue arrows are lit up, and that's because there's more than one item on this mat. So I'm just going to use the arrows to jump to these two little stray bits and get rid of them first, to get rid of those. Now I'm going to zoom in . I'm going to try and go to 400% in the hope that you're going to be able to see this better. Now the reason that I wanted to choose this word rather than the other word that's on the mat is because, as I said originally, the so and the grateful, although these are individual letters, the so is one word and the grateful is another. And you can see here, hopefully quite clearly, if I try and zoom in a bit more for you, that the scan has got a red box around the RATEFUL. The G is separated and the word so is separated. And I want to make a matting layer to go around the whole of these two words together for this stamped image. So this is why I wanted to do this, in the hope that, you know, this is what you're going to come up against, and I'm going to hopefully show you how you can make it work. So I'm going to say OK. I'm going to come to the three red boxes, and I'm going to choose everything on the mat. So that's the two words, and as far as the scan is concerned, it's the G on its own, the grateful and the so. So that's chosen everything. I'm going to say OK, object edit, and I'm going to group them. If you don't select the three red boxes and select everything on your mat, the group option won't be available to you. So now these are a group, I can come to the offset icon and select that. And here now, obviously, as I said to you before, scan to cut data is a 0.06 minimum outline. And I can't see whether using a 0.06 is going to give me what I'm looking for. I want an outline around the so and the grateful that overlaps, so I can weld the two offset sections together to give me one big matting layer. And I think this is where people have got a bit confused after watching the live stream when they've watched it on replay, because some people are saying the weld option isn't available to me, and that's because they're probably using a word like this that's already all joined up and the machine is picking up one complete outline. So I'm going to say OK for now. And I'm going to say OK again. And I'm going to zoom in and try and see what I've got. And it looks as though the offset is probably overlapping. So I'm going to say OK. I'm just going to come back here. Now I'm just going to use the arrows to toggle between the inner word and the outer, and it's the inner word I want to get rid of. So I should be able to now drag this out of the way, and I can see now that these letters, it's put lines, it's put an offset line around the so, the G and the rest of the word rateful, and that's what I want because I need these bits to all overlap with this offset so I can weld them. But again, I'm not sure. I'm trying to zoom in as much as I can for you. So can you see here, I've got overlapping offsets, and that's what I want. I'm going to get rid of the original outline. So I'm going to say OK with it selected and send it to the bin. Now I'm going to come back to this. So I'm going to come into Object Edit to be able to weld all these bits together to give me one big matting layer. I've got to now ungroup them. So they're all individual. You can see there's all red boxes now around all the elements. And now I can say weld. And if I zoom in, you can see exactly what I've got. I've got one outline now that's been welded around all those individual offset elements, and that's exactly what I want. So I'm going to say, yes, I want to weld it. And I'm going to say OK, 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 and I'm going to go select and cut and start. So that's finished. I'm going to say OK, and I'm going to unload the mat this time. And I'm just going to flip you back and lift up this piece of card, but I'm just going to bring in my yellow piece and just kind of position it there at the moment so I know when I move it along, because I want to put it over this word here. So I can see that the start of this letter starts on about 4. So that's just kind of visual guide for me. So I'm going to get rid of that, the stamped image. And now when I pick this up, this has given me the perfect outline all around what was originally individual letters and 2 separate words. It's given me one matting layer, and that's exactly what I wanted. Now I'm just going to bring this yellow piece back in and put it on the mat here. And I'm going to do an offset for this. So I'm going to load this back into the machine. I'm going to hit the back button. I've only got the offset that I've just cut, which is what I want. I'm going to say Edit, Object Edit, and come to Offset. I'm going to leave it as a 0.06 offset, but if you didn't want the offset that big, you could take the measurement down. If you want it bigger, you can make it bigger. And you can keep going on with this process. You could cut this next offset, unload it, put another piece of card on, do another offset, and you could just keep going. But I'm going to say OK, and I'm going to say OK again, just to get me to these arrows. I want to make sure that I've got the white offset now that I've just cut. So I'm just going to hit the arrows to see which the box jumps to. And I'm not sure how well you'll see this. I'm going to try and zoom in. But when I touch these arrows, I can see that the box is going to the middle word. And then when I touch it again, it's going to the outside. It's the outside word I want to keep. So I need to hit the arrow to bring the middle one, sorry, the smaller one to be selected. And again, I'm just going to use the arrows on my keyboard to drag it out of the way. Sometimes with some small little words, I've found that it's difficult to get hold of them. So I want to delete this one now. So I'm going to say OK, send it to the rubbish and say OK. And this is now the 0.06 offset of the original 0.06 offset that I've just cut, if that makes sense. So I'm going to say OK, OK, select, cut and start. So I'm going to unload the mat. Peel this away, and here is now my offset. So when I bring in my stamped greeting, that sits on there perfectly. In fact, I'll put a little bit of glue on it. It'll make it easier to handle. I'll just put a tiny bit of glue on it and stick it together. And hopefully you'll be able to see it better. Let's just move the mat out of the way. So there it is. So that's how to make offset layers directly on your ScanNCut machine from your hand stamped or printed images. So these are the two I did on Sunday. These are the two I've just done now. And these are some more that I'd already cut without matting layers but with an offset border. And you can see that these are not all joined up. I mean, this says, first my mother, forever my friend, all individual letters, all individual words. This one, for all you do. The F of the 4 is not joined to the O and the R. Again, separate words. Some of the letters within the words are joined up, but some are not. But you can see that it does work. But the process is, and this is, I think, the important thing for me to point out to you. If you've got one individual word where all the letters are already welded together, you don't need to do the weld function within the machine, because the machine, when you do ScanNCut data, will just put one outline around your single stamped individual word. If you've got individual letters like this one here, and they're also individual words, you then have to make sure that you group them to be able to add the offset around everything. And then in order to make all the individual offsets, which your machine will pick up, you know, around each of your individual letters, you have to ungroup once you've applied the offset to be able to then weld. So I hope that makes that a little bit clearer for you. Give it a go, have a play around with it. It's just a case of getting the right process. And, you know, when you need to group to be able to put the offset on, and then, you know, when you need to ungroup to do the weld. But if you play with it, that's the best way to learn. That's all I do. All as I've done working this out. No one showed me how to do this. I just worked it out for myself. You know, I just sat down one day and thought, well, if I apply this offset and it's picking up all those individual letters, can I then somehow, you know, remove the original word that was there and weld them, and what do I get? And this is what I got. So it does work, it's just a case of you sitting down and playing with it yourself. Anyway, please give the video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you don't already do so, and I'll see you in my next video. Thank you.